What's good? It is Sam here, and today I wanted to talk about how Andrew Yang is completely fucking destroying the competition on YouTube. Utterly just destruction. So I wanted to get into that. Before I do that, if this is your first time here, what is good? My name is Sam, and I am not high. Um, for those of you who are returning, it's good to frickin' see you. You had better be pressing that like button. Okay, now let's jump into it. So, what do we have here? So I was just doing research for my website ranking where I stack rank all the candidates based on the performance of their campaign website against each other. And Andrew Yang's was up here when I got to his portion. And I noticed that this is Alexa. This does a lot of analytics for websites, and it's owned by Amazon. And you can see the 90-day view here. So it actually was there was a decline in terms of popularity on a global basis here. Around it was at 24,000th in terms of global ranking of websites. This is a shitload of websites too. Remember, there's a boatload of freaking websites, and it was almost down to over 28,000. It was over 28,000. And what happened here? You see this little spike. Let me see if I can zoom in. Oh, that was a little bit too much. Let me see if that's a little bit better of view. There we go. And we see this pop here where there's a giant, there's like a right, almost like a 45-degree angle up and to the right that almost just shifts the whole graph. The growth rate kind of like stays the same. Well, in this case, it actually shifted it from down to up, right? Because he had been trending down for the 90-day, remember? And then this just actually shifts it up at a positive angle. So that was actually the debate in July. That's when this took place. And then we just had a debate about a month ago. And that is exactly what happened there. Now, it looks like some of that growth was not sustained here. Which is kind of interesting. He did jump up, but we'll have to see how this plays out. Anyways, that's what triggered me into this. So what we have is Google Trends here, and I've got Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Andrew Yang here across the top. And what this is all of the search volume on YouTube in the past 12 months for each of these candidates' names. Now, if we draw our attention down here to the interest over time, what we have is Andrew Yang is number one with Bernie Sanders, basically. Bernie Sanders is a little bit less, but Andrew Yang is still ahead. And then the next closest is Joe Biden. Joe Biden's like picking it up way up in third, like substantially behind. You know when the first two people in a race like go through and they're like neck and neck, and then the third person is always like way back here? It's kind of like that. Um, on YouTube in terms of the 12-month move. But let's go to something that's a little bit more relevant and take a look at the 90-day period. And on the 90-day period, that lead has actually like double. I mean, he's double what Bernie Sanders has. Oh wait, no. He's got a bunch more in terms of the spacing of his lead now over Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders looks like he's gained some additional over Joe Biden. But what's really interesting is when we look at the macro view here of the country, and this is the search volume within a specific state. Um, all five of these candidates and who has like the biggest proportion of the pie. So we see that Andrew Yang has dominated the country right here with the majority of the search volume in a lot of states. Like we have here in Washington, Andrew Yang has 50% of all search volume for these candidates. In California, 49%. In Nevada, 48%. These are like crazy numbers. In Florida, 37%. And Florida and California are just gigantic states. Let's see how it is in Texas. So in Texas, he's at 34%. Like these Texas, I don't I have no actual idea, but I feel like Texas is a Republican, but I have no idea because I don't really follow politics. But he's ranking very well there. Let's check New York. He's at 40% in New York out of all search volume over the last 90 days. These are pretty astonishing numbers when you take a look at it. That he is really drawing a lot of attention on the #2 biggest site on the frickin' planet. Okay, so here we came into the very near term, and this is over the past 30 days here, and we can see on this graph here that he's just like well above everybody except for Joe. Looks like Joe Biden seems to be the next closest, and I think we know why with what's going on in the news in terms of all that shady shit Joe Biden and his entire family is up to. But we see Andrew Yang, like the amount of lead he has over everybody else is just staggering. Kamala Harris is just like way down here, dragging up the rear, and now look at like Alaska here, 100% of the search volume. That means that there's so many searches for Andrew Yang relative to everybody else in Alaska that the other peoples who have searched for these people come up as zero because it's such a negligible amount, right? If there's like 16 million searches for Andrew Yang and 430 for Joe Biden, that's pretty much zero when you take a look at it on a percentage basis because they're so far out in terms of decimal places. So that's pretty astonishing. It is Alaska though, but if we jump over some of these things, it looks like his lead is increased. So in Florida, it was at 34, now it's at 35, and in New York, it's at 40, and now it's at 44. Also in California, I think it was around 48 or 49, and now it's at 58. Let's jump up here. I think we checked Washington as well. Oh, wow, and it's jumped up in Washington. So the Andrew Yang is increasing his popularity across a bunch of major states, which is kind of interesting, especially as we step in. So let's go into the last view that we're going to take a look at, and this is over the past 7 days. So there's been some news about Bernie Sanders here, which was related to his heart attack. So that's why I feel that Bernie came back into the spotlight, because last week it was Joe Biden and all the shit that was happening. So just recently this happened with Bernie Sanders, and that makes sense. But there's still a tremendous amount of search volume to Andrew Yang versus like nearly, not quite, but nearly doubling the next closest person in terms of search volume. So that means that for every one search of Andrew Yang, there is, or for every one search of, say, Joe Biden, there's 2 searches done for Andrew Yang, almost at this point, which is pretty staggering. And when you look at this on the 30-day, I feel like it's probably not going to be super representative as we get into bigger time periods. Yeah, it's more dispersed at this level, which could be a trend in another way. We don't know, but I will keep you guys updated. Oh wow, look at Hawaii. Yeah, I think Kamala Harris. I think somebody who's running might be from California or Hawaii, but I'm not sure who that might be. Anyways, if you guys like this video, make sure to smash that like button, share this video with somebody else who you think would get value out of it. It really does help the channel out. I'm trying to draw some attention to some things that are interesting to me, but also to the understanding that the way that we do things in terms of measurement of the essence of like what people are thinking about doesn't necessarily have to be just some propaganda that people are putting forth and talking heads. Like there's a source for the data, and that's what we're trying to establish here. So if you agree with that and want to spread that message, share this video with somebody. It really does help out the channel. And smash that like button as well. Peace the fuck out.